Over 40? 7 brutal plank variations nobody does that will define your abs in 21 days. Before we get started, leave a comment below with your name and your biggest training challenge right now. We will do our best to read as many comments as possible. Plank number 1, knee to chest. If you have been training for years and feel like your traditional plank has stopped delivering results, this variation will reignite the challenge. And yes, I know, planks have never been anyone's idea of fun, but at least this one goes by fast because you will be too busy trying not to lose your balance. The knee to chest plank adds a dynamic component to the classic isometric hold, forcing your core to work on 2 fronts at the same time: stabilization and controlled movement. Electromyography studies show that plank exercises with a dynamic component significantly activate the rectus abdominis and the obliques more than the traditional static plank, since the body needs to resist the rotation generated by the displacement of the knee. The main muscles recruited here are the rectus abdominis, the internal and external obliques, the transverse abdominis, and, secondarily, the hip flexors. To perform it correctly, get into a high plank position with your hands aligned directly below your shoulders. Bring one knee toward your chest, keeping your spine neutral and your hips stable, without letting your lower back arch or your glutes rise. Return to the starting position in a controlled manner and repeat with the other leg. An extra tip to maximize your gains is to exhale as the knee approaches your chest, which increases core recruitment through controlled intra-abdominal pressure. A common mistake is letting the hips sway from side to side with each repetition, which takes the tension off the abs and overloads the lower back. Another frequent mistake is performing the movement too quickly, losing control and real muscle activation. For your training, start with 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions on each side, maintaining controlled breathing. As your endurance improves, you can progress by increasing from 10 to 15 repetitions per side before thinking about any other variation. Regular practitioners tend to notice greater lower back stability within the first few weeks, which is especially relevant after 40, when the core tends to lose automatic activation if it is not trained with intention. If you experience acute lower back pain, an active herniated disc, or a recent hip injury, this exercise should be avoided or adapted with professional guidance, since the dynamic component requires more joint control than the static plank. Plank number 2, alternating arm and leg raise. This variation is known for demanding a level of proprioception that very few people actually train. By simultaneously removing one point of support from each side of the body, you reduce the base of support and force your core to work as a true central stabilizer, not just as a muscle for appearance. The primary muscles recruited are the transverse abdominis, the spinal erectors, the gluteus maximus, and the gluteus medius, along with strong recruitment of the shoulder stabilizers. To perform it, start in a high plank position with your core engaged and your spine neutral. Raise your right arm forward and, simultaneously, your left leg behind you, keeping your hips level and without rotating your torso. Hold for 1 to 2 seconds and then switch sides. Think of it as balancing a tray full of glasses on top of a table that only has 2 legs touching the ground. Any lack of care and everything collapses. The tip that makes all the difference here is to focus your gaze on a fixed point on the floor, slightly ahead of your hands. This helps keep your neck aligned with your spine and prevents compensations that overload the cervical region. A common mistake is letting the hips drop toward the side opposite the raised arm, which eliminates practically all the benefit of the exercise by taking tension away from the core and transferring it to the lower back. Another frequent mistake is raising the arm and leg too high, which takes away the stability that the exercise demands. Start with 3 sets of 6 to 8 repetitions on each side, prioritizing quality over speed. When your technique is solid, progress by increasing the hold time from 1 to 3 seconds on each repetition before increasing the total number of repetitions. I have observed that practitioners over 40 who include this type of exercise report fewer episodes of lower back pain in daily life, likely due to improved co-activation of the deep spinal stabilizers. This exercise should be avoided by anyone with an unrehabilitated shoulder instability, dizziness related to vestibular changes, or a recent wrist injury, since the reduced base of support places greater demand on those joints. Plank number 3, shoulder tap. The shoulder tap plank is an anti-rotation exercise par excellence. Unlike what many people think, the goal here is not the movement of the arm, but rather your torso's ability to remain completely still while your body weight shifts from one side to the other. The primary muscle recruitment involves the rectus abdominis, the internal and external obliques, the transverse abdominis, and the shoulder stabilizers, mainly the rotator cuff and the serratus anterior. To perform it, hold a high plank position with your feet slightly wider than normal, which increases your base of support and makes control easier in the first few weeks. Tap the opposite shoulder with one hand without letting your hips rotate, and return your hand to the floor before repeating on the other side. The extra tip that usually solves the instability problem is to imagine a glass of water balanced on your lower back that cannot spill during the movement. A common mistake is spreading the feet too wide right from the start and never progressing to a narrower base, which limits anti-rotational strength gains over time. Another mistake is performing the tap too quickly, without eccentric control of the return movement. It is worth saying that on the first attempt, it is very likely that your hips will sway more than they should, and that is perfectly fine. It is part of the process of learning a new movement pattern even after years of training. I recommend starting with 3 sets of 10 to 12 total taps, alternating sides, and progressing by gradually bringing your feet closer together as stability improves, before thinking about any more challenging variation. This type of anti-rotation work is particularly relevant for people over 40, as it helps protect the lumbar spine during everyday activities that involve torso rotation, such as carrying a grocery bag or grabbing something from the back seat of a car. Avoid this exercise if you have an acute wrist or shoulder injury, since it requires repeated weight transfer onto a single point of support at a time, which increases the demand on those joints. Plank number 4, Copenhagen plank. The Copenhagen plank is, without a doubt, the least known variation on this list, and perhaps the one that will make you stumble over its name before you even stumble over the execution. But it is also one of the most valuable for those who have been training for years and already feel discomfort in the groin at the end of leg workouts or runs. It was popularized by European soccer teams as a tool for preventing injuries in the adductor region, and for good reason. What many people do not know is that the adductor muscles, located on the inner thigh, are frequently neglected in conventional training, despite being essential for hip stability in virtually any lateral or rotational movement. The main muscles worked are the hip adductors, with significant participation from the core as a trunk stabilizer throughout the exercise. To perform it, lie on your side supported on your forearm, as in a side plank, but position your top leg resting on a bench or elevated surface with your knee slightly bent. Raise your bottom leg toward the supported leg, contracting the inner thigh, then lower it in a controlled manner without letting it touch the floor between repetitions. Keep your hips aligned throughout the movement without letting them fall backward. The extra tip here is to start with the regressive version, resting your top knee on the bench instead of your entire foot, which reduces the strength requirement without losing the movement pattern. A common mistake is letting the hips rotate backward during the lift, which takes the emphasis off the adductors and transfers the effort to the lower back. Another frequent mistake is using too short a range of motion, which drastically reduces the actual stimulus on the muscle. Start with 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 8 repetitions on each side in the regressive version, and progress to the full version with the entire foot, supported only when you feel total control of the movement. Practitioners who include this exercise regularly report less groin discomfort during runs, changes of direction, and even when sitting down and getting up from lower positions, something common in daily routines after 40. Avoid or adapt this exercise if you have an active groin injury, adductor tendinitis in the acute phase, or significant hip mobility limitations, since the position requires considerable range of motion from that joint. Before we continue, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Having constant access to science-based information is what will allow you to make progress with long-term health in the world of exercise. Plank number 5. Side plank. The side plank tends to be underestimated by those who have been training for years, treated as a warm-up exercise, when, in fact, it is one of the most efficient tools for developing lateral trunk stability, something that most gym training programs simply ignore. Biomechanics research indicates that the side plank generates high levels of activation in the obliques and the quadratus lumborum when performed with correct alignment, even surpassing some traditional lateral trunk flexion exercises performed with load. The primary muscles involved are the internal and external obliques, the quadratus lumborum, and the gluteus medius, the latter being fundamental for hip stability during walking and running. To perform it, lie on your side with your forearm resting on the floor, elbow aligned directly below your shoulder. Raise your hips until your body forms a straight line from your head to your feet, without letting them fall forward or backward. Hold the position for the designated time, breathing in a controlled manner. The extra tip that makes a real difference is to actively press your elbow into the floor, which increases the recruitment of the shoulder stabilizers and reduces the load on the joint. A common mistake is letting the hips drop, losing alignment and drastically reducing oblique activation. Another frequent mistake is holding your breath during the exercise, which unnecessarily increases blood pressure during the set. Start by holding 20 to 30 seconds on each side for 3 sets, and progress by increasing the hold time from 30 to 45 seconds before considering any variation with a leg raise. The gluteus medius, intensely activated here, is frequently the missing link for men who feel lateral hip pain when walking long distances, something that becomes more common as years of training accumulate joint wear without the proper stabilization work. This exercise should be avoided by anyone with an acute injury to the supporting shoulder or significant lateral hip pain, since it sustains a large portion of the body weight on those two structures. Plank number 6, reverse plank. While the previous variations primarily work the anterior and lateral chains, the reverse plank shifts all the focus to the posterior chain, a region frequently neglected by those who have spent decades training only what shows in the mirror. The main muscles recruited are the glutes, the hamstrings, the spinal erectors, and, secondarily, the posterior deltoids, which help stabilize the shoulders in the inverted position. To perform it, sit on the floor with your legs extended in front of you and your hands resting behind your hips, fingers pointing toward your feet, or slightly outward. Raise your hips until your body forms a straight line from your shoulders to your heels, squeezing your glutes at the top of the movement. Hold the position for the designated time. The extra tip is to think about pushing the floor away with your hands, which more strongly activates the shoulder stabilizers and prevents the joint from being overloaded in a vulnerable position. A common mistake is letting the hips drop before the intended time, which drastically reduces the isometric work of the glutes. Another frequent mistake is hyperextending the neck by throwing the head backward, which creates unnecessary cervical tension. Start by holding 15 to 20 seconds for 3 sets, and progress by gradually increasing to 30 to 40 seconds before adding any instability variation. Since the gluteus maximus is the largest muscle in the human body, keeping it active through exercises like this contributes not only to aesthetics, but also to pelvic stabilization and the prevention of lower back pain that is so common in those who spend long periods sitting at work. Avoid this exercise if you have an acute wrist injury, carpal tunnel syndrome in a symptomatic phase, or severe shoulder mobility limitations, since the position requires significant extension of that joint under load. Plank number 7, traditional plank. We close with the most well-known exercise on the list, and also the most poorly executed. The traditional plank seems simple, but the difference between doing it correctly and just surviving the time is what separates those who truly strengthen their core from those who simply accumulate minutes without real results. The primary muscles worked are the rectus abdominis, the transverse abdominis, the obliques, and, to a lesser degree, the spinal erectors and the shoulder stabilizers. To perform it, rest your forearms on the floor with your elbows aligned directly below your shoulders and extend your legs behind you, supporting yourself on the balls of your feet. Keep your body in a straight line from your head to your heels, engaging your abs and your glutes, without letting your hips rise or drop. The extra tip that most people ignore is to imagine pulling your navel toward your spine throughout the entire movement, which increases the activation of the transverse abdominis, the primary muscle responsible for true lumbar spine stabilization. A mistake I see many people make is letting the hips rise too high, turning the plank into a position that resembles an upside-down V, which removes almost all the tension from the abs. Another common mistake is holding the breath completely, which limits the hold time and unnecessarily increases blood pressure. Start by holding 30 to 40 seconds for 3 sets, and progress by increasing the time from 40 to 60 seconds, before considering any of the previous variations as a natural progression. The beauty of this exercise lies in its ability to serve as a gauge of your core development, since the same position, held for longer and with greater control, directly reveals the progress of your deep musculature. This exercise should be avoided or adapted by anyone with a herniated disc in the acute phase, undiagnosed intense lower back pain, or a recent wrist injury, since it requires prolonged weight bearing on those structures. If you enjoyed this and want to see our special list of the 10 things that force the body to gain muscle mass more quickly after 40, we have a video appearing on screen right now showing each one of them in detail. It is free, so make sure you check it out. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and God bless you, my friend.